probably your most famous angle in WWE as a wrestler for a lot of fans is that Big Boss Man angle.
Oh, with Pepper?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
the kennel from, I know.
From Hell match.
Yeah.
You want to just briefly go over...
I'm glad to, because I'll clear that thing up. I've been doing that a lot lately because everybody likes to bring it up because of the fact that Mick made so much fun of it. Here's how this works, okay? Every match has a gimmick. It's a focal point. It's what you build your story around. Understand?
Yes.
Easy. So that gimmick was about dogs. When I was approached, I swear to God, may he strike me dead where I stand. Vince Russo came to me because they had wanted to get rid of the head, which they couldn't because it was so over. And Vince Russo had seen the movie Son of Sam where he heard voices from a Chihuahua. He wanted to give me a Chihuahua, told me the whole thing. I said, great. My exact words, please make sure you have highly trained animals. Why? Well, because the number one rule in entertainment is you don't work with animals or kids. They'll always outshine you, upstage you, or they'll screw up the whole scene. So, and especially important, never work with animals or kids. So, verbatim, the Chihuahua, highly trained, so that I can interact with it, right? Okay, no problem. Okay, show up TV next week. There's a Chihuahua. There's a lady sitting with the Chihuahua. Oh, you're his trainer? No, I'm his owner. Oh, they called a veterinarian clinic in Detroit and got a list of names with the people that owned a Chihuahua. That's it. Immediately go to Vince Russo. I swear to you, as I stand, went to Vince Russo. You understand, I said trained animals. Oh, it's just the Chihuahua will be fine. When we get to this thing with these dogs, we have to have trained animals. Do you understand, Vince? Now, I forget exactly how many months this storyline went, but it went for a long time. Do you know how many times I reiterated that we needed trained animals? Numerous times that we needed trained animals. Numerous times that we needed trained animals. That we needed highly trained animals from the same kennel that could be led by one or two people verbally who stood outside the cage. I cannot emphasize that enough. I show up in Charlotte, notice that there are 7 or 8 dogs with 7 or 8 different people. Walk around, one has some obedience training. Now you have to understand the entire match, the entire angle is built around the focal point being these dogs. How can you use these dogs? What can you do with these dogs? Please explain to me, because I would like to hear somebody tell me what they expect you to do with them when they're out there urinating, defecating, and fornicating so much they couldn't even show them on TV. When the gimmick of the match is that you're inside a cage that's inside a cell that has, like sharks surrounding it, dogs that you now need to get through and out of the other side. And you can't even interact with the dogs. Curious. But now it's become a joke, and it's now all my responsibility, even though I had no control over the fact.
Whose responsibility would you put that on? Obviously, it was
the company's.
The company, yeah. But
it's not mine. I would, if they'd have told me go find trained dogs, what do you think I'd have done?
You would have done it.
I would have made sure that I found trained dogs that were highly trained with one person, because every time I went and spoke to Russo, I said that. Vince McMahon himself actually apologized to me for putting me in that situation. So now I get people to ask me about that all the time because it's such a joke when I had nothing to do with it. Now, granted, the number one rule in wrestling is you have to take shit and make shinola. So it was my responsibility to try to make the best match I could in spite of the fact that we couldn't even utilize the dogs. Brought a bunch of weapons out, tried to do everything I could to take the focus off of what we had literally sold the audience on for months to now in one night go, no, ignore all of that, watch all of this. Of course it doesn't work.
And was the boss man as upset about it as you are?
Yeah, he was. It was embarrassing for both of us. It wasn't just embarrassing for me. It was embarrassing for him too. I mean, you know, we're put in this ridiculous situation. I mean, what do you do? So, you know, and people, I love it when people ask that question because it gives me an opportunity to at least tell my side of it and to explain to people. Because what people don't get is that, and I don't know why, any person with a half an intellect should understand that if you make a murder mystery novel and then there's no body, there's no murder, well, what are you going to tell a story about?
Right.
You know, it's kind of a bad situation.
You know, that's one of my problems. Some people are gifted at bullshit. And he's definitely gifted at bullshit, brother, because he keeps getting jobs and keeps getting the positions. I'm not a good politician. I know that's my problem, too. I know that I speak my mind, and that gets me in trouble, too, because you got to candy coat shit when you're dealing with TV people. But I just can't do it, man. And that's probably the reason I'm not back in the WWF, is because even the short time that I was doing the booking up there, Vince was constantly on me going, Jake, the perception is you know, these people are intimidated by you and they think that you think they're stupid. And I said, well, you know, Vince, I do think they're fucking stupid. They don't know a goddamn thing about wrestling and you're letting them fucking run shit. And that's not the way you deal business, you know.
I have to ask your thoughts on Vince Russo in general.
Well, you know, he obviously had a successful run with when he was working with Vince McMahon. And then when he wasn't working with Vince McMahon, he was never that successful. And I think that's just what happened. He didn't fit well with WCW. I don't think Vince Russo understood the big picture of wrestling at all. I think that, you know, I think he was very good at coming up with ideas. And there were times where I would watch, when he was with TNA, I would watch interviews and I go, you know, for certain characters, I thought he was very good at scripting the interviews with them. So I go, you know, he's talented there. With the women, I thought he made them all trashy. So I thought that was like a negative. But in the big picture in TNA, it was far more negative than positive. And WCW, it was really negative. I think when he came in, I think it was salvageable, but he went in the direction that was not going to save it. He went to, you know, I'm not saying you go with like long matches and things like that or traditional wrestling, but when every match is a run-in and nothing means anything and you're just trying to hit people over the head with stuff, they're going to burn out on it real quick. And also, he was catering to a different audience and it was just a different time. And he didn't have Vince McMahon. You know, remember, when you have Vince McMahon, you have a guy with decades of experience who can tweak those angles and tweak those ideas. Perhaps if he had someone who, you know, on there who would be above him, who could tweak the ideas. But when people would try to give him advice, he thought he knew everything. And he didn't. And, you know, he was the guy, you know, I mean, WCW was in bad shape when he got there, but it was in a lot worse shape very quickly, you know, after he was there.
What did you think of it when they brought Vince Russo in?
I like Vince Russo. He's a nice enough guy. I love Ed Ferrara. He's a good friend of mine. I just want to say this. I wasn't a fan of their booking. I wasn't a fan. I thought it was infantile. I thought it was silly. I thought it would insulted a lot of people's intelligence. People will put up with a lot of stuff if they're a wrestling fan. If they're a Nitro fan, they'll be willing to look over a lot of DQ main events that you know roll your eyes at, and you know angles that change, you know, because of different things happening. This guy getting hurt, or Scott Hall, you know, needing to go, you know, take a couple weeks off. People will roll their eyes and they'll stick with the product. But when you insult their intelligence, when you put Prince Iakea out there as a guy who's supposed to be Prince the singer. The things that they did, I'm not a big fan of. I've said it to their face. I don't think they're bad people. I think they were trying to do something that didn't work. Whether they'll admit now it didn't work or not, I don't know. But I'll tell you, as far as this fan goes, who was there for it all, what they were trying to do didn't work.
And the infamous Bash at the Beach situation with Hulk Hogan, you mentioned something about this off camera. What were you told about that whole
Well,
thing?
here, all I was told, I was working in talent relations. So towards the end of WCW, I actually got a lot of opportunities. I got an opportunity with Larry to do the play-by-play. I got an opportunity to do the live event stuff that Gene wasn't doing anymore. Got an opportunity to sit as a junior member of the booking team, and I got an opportunity to work in talent relations under Terry Taylor. And if WCW was sold to Eric, John Laurinaitis was going to be Eric's right-hand man, and I was going to be John Laurinaitis' assistant. That was etched in stone. I'd already been told that. Talent relations. Only thing I could tell you for sure about that angle is the Thursday before Bash at the Beach, I was told to call Booker T and tell him to bring a suit for the next Nitro because he was going to be world champion that Monday. Now, how it was supposed to go down to how it really went down, did Hulk change plans? Did Vince go into business with himself? I don't know. And I don't think anybody, only the parties will ever know. Vince, Russo, and Eric, and Hulk, and to a lesser extent, Jeff Jarrett will ever really know what happened. But what I will tell you was the plan was all along for Booker T to walk out of that pay-per-view as WCW World Heavyweight Champion. That's my little 2 cents on the deal.
And Vince Russo, so I guess you got along with him in those days?
Not really. I mean, not yes or no. It just, he was, to be honest, I guess, if I had any negative thing, I would always try to talk to him, but he was always too busy with Jarrett. Like, you're like wait off to the side. Like, and he's like, fuck it, whatever, let's do whatever. So he's always busy with Jeff. But I didn't have anything against him. I mean, how could I be upset? He was a part of getting that great entrance and all that stuff, so.
You really liked Jeff Jarrett, didn't you?
Yeah, he did. He did.
You made him world champion and everything in WCW.
Yeah.
Now, were they always going to make you a group with Edge and Christian, or was it originally going to be just you?
I think I initially was just not even supposed to be that long there. I think that whole thing was just to shuttle Edge in. They didn't know what to do with Adam. They were going to make him a poet. They were going to do this. They had all these ideas for him that just didn't suit. They didn't know how to bring him in, how to make him fit or what, this and this and that. And then they thought, well, okay, we have this mysterious feud with this guy, go whatever. And then it turned into a group. I don't think it was ever going to be a group. They didn't know anything. They couldn't even tell you why we were feuding. Nobody knows. Me and him still at. Why were we at?
What were your first impressions of Edge and Christian?
Good. I met Edge, Adam I worked him on a couple shows prior to that. Like when he heard that I was going to be working, like not under that thing, but just on shows. I met him. He's a great guy. He was always a great guy. Christian, he always picks on me because I call him the squeaky wheel. Like squeaky wheel gets the oil. He'll complain about everything. Like, why am I doing a job? Well, you're the smallest guy. Well, that still makes sense. I love Christian for that. So I mean, they're both great guys. I never had any bad feelings about them at all.
Were you surprised at all the success Edge ended up having?
Not Edge. They told me that I was pulled to the side and told that Edge was the man. Christian, I was surprised it carried on as long as it did. Not because he's talented. I think he's underrated, but he could put great matches together and stuff like that. I think he's one of the best at putting a match together and everybody getting their stuff and it making sense. Really do. But the Edge, no, I knew. They told me, hey, make sure this guy's going.
Right.
They knew he was going. Bottom line, he was,
because there was
from day one. He was the man, going to be the man.
Because there was always some confusion that you were initially going to be like the Edge of the group.
No. I was strictly there to shuttle. I knew my role. Yeah.
And they had you working with the Undertaker's Ministry of Darkness for a while. Was that cool working with him, or was that like
kiss of death kind of too at the same time, because you can't be a faction when he has a faction. And then first they said, oh, when they said you guys are going to be in the ministry, I said, oh, but our days are numbered, man. He goes, what do you mean? I go, this isn't good. And I'm good when they put a group within a group, figure it out. It's not like we're not the acolytes, or whatever. We're like, just don't really fit. It's not good. He goes, I go, you'll see. And then they used to have us all come out on the stage at the end of the show, the ministry at the end, and they'd still the ministry would getting booed, getting the heat they're supposed to get. But then the arena would slowly go, brood. And then I looked at him, I said, this isn't good. He goes, no. I go, no, this is good. And next thing you know, they came and said, oh, we would have split you from the ministry. I said, we're done. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, we're done. And then they feuded us, and I said, well, I'm telling you, we're over as a Brood. He goes, no, not even a month or two later. They're like, hey, you're the Brood. but I knew that I was only there to shuttle him. So that whole Brood thing was accidental fire, a wildfire. You know what I mean? It was a spark that should have never caught on, and it just burnt rampant, Then they had to get it under control. Because, it wasn't the Brood, wasn't the thing they wanted. Not at all. Vince and the vampire thing. Vince McMahon didn't want the vampire thing. I mean, people don't know this a lot or anything, but he came to me and told me that he would never use the vampire character, lose the weight, get rid of the fangs, because I had them in permanent, grow hair in because I had a skullet, like a mohawk. Not quite a mohawk, kind of a mullet with a side shaved, a skullet. And now, yeah, I said, I wouldn't use that. You're not going to use that character. But it was Vince Russo. When I say he pushed it through, I think he had creative control for like 30 days. It gave him like full creative control. Do you remember that at all, or something?
This is the first I've heard of it, but it's possible.
I think there was something where he got like full kind of say without any question on something, and he slid the vampire thing in, and I had heat from day one.
Was it him that came up with bringing you guys out on the stage? Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was a big Gene Simmons fan, so that was like a Gene Simmons tribute. So I was sprayed of blood. It was, his solo with the blood coming out and all that. Everything was kind of Kiss orientated out of that.
I didn't get along with Vince Russo. And I think what Vince Russo wanted to do was push me out of my contract. He wanted me to quit to free up some money for some of the younger guys. And of course, I wasn't going to quit, So they said, we're going to make you the janitor of the WCW, and you got to wear a janitor suit. I'm like, oh, that's great, man. Make it work. And we made the little angle work for a while.
What did you think of Vince Russo, the amount they paid him to come in, and basically he ended up killing the company?
Yeah, I'm not a big Vince Russo fan, not only, he tries to take credit for what happened with WWF evolution into WWE. There's only one Vince that can take credit for that, and that's Vince McMahon, not Vince Russo. But anyway, they brought him in, and they thought but the guy made himself world champion. Right off the bat, there's a little bit of an ego problem there. If you're the booker and you're making yourself world champion, and David Arquette, some poor decisions. But the bottom line is that was the company I was going to stay with, because Jimmy Hart and I used to talk. It's like being on the Titanic. The ship's going down, but you want to stay on it as long as possible.
And you're probably the highest paid janitor in the world.
At that point, I wasn't working that much. They were just sending me my checks because they didn't like they told me to cut down on the hoeing and they just didn't like my character. But I was still on contract, so. But you could see the end was coming. There was no question. Now Vince buying it, I don't know if anybody saw that coming.
Do you think they could have got more for the company, considering the whole video library was?
Geez, yeah, they got a great library. I mean, but that's good for us guys that were at WCW, at Mid-South, at Georgia Championship Wrestling, because now Vince has those libraries, and it's exposing us to a whole new generation of kids that wouldn't see us without the WWE Network.
For Vince Russo, when he was in, did you have to deal with him at all?
Yes. And Vince one day came to my office door and cut a promo on me. And what was objectionable about it was my secretary was sitting out there and another staff was sitting a few feet away. And if he had closed the door and vented, it would have been one thing, but he stood in the doorway, leaning on the door, and cut a promo on me. And used crass language, and then turned and stormed away. That's what I took exception with. That's what was totally unprofessional, especially the where and when he did it. And I didn't have any use for him, as I didn't really have much use for Bischoff, and I blame Brad Siegel for allowing that to happen. A number of years went by, and I don't know how many years ago it was, but there was a convention in New York, and they brought in a bunch of guys. Dory and Terry were there. God, it was like the who's who of wrestling were there to appear for signings and photo ops. And they had myself, Baby Doll, and Vince Russo. It was like three managers. And I remember the promoter came back and said, I want to put you and Vince Russo. And I said, I've never been difficult in my life. I said, I just ask one thing. Okay, put us there with 3 managers. I understand the position that you're in. All I ask as a personal favor is put me at one end of the table, put Baby Doll in the middle, and then put Vince at the other end of the table. Oh, I didn't know. Not a problem, which is what he did. And when we were there, we didn't really make eye contact, didn't have any interaction. And at one point, Vince got up and he had to walk. We were all in the back of the room and he had to walk to the front of the room to go to the restroom or whatever. Got up, walked right past me, never looked or acknowledged me. And about the 3rd time out, he got up, got to the end of the table, a couple of feet in front of me, stopped dead in his tracks, turned, walked up to the table, and said, I owe you an apology. And he said, what I did was wrong, and I hope you can forgive me. And I said, well, it takes a hell of a man. We all make mistakes in life. And you did something that takes a hell of a man to come up and confront another man and say, I was wrong, I apologize, hope you'll forgive me. And I stuck my hand out. He stuck his hand out. And then he said, I'm due to write another book. And he said, when I do, I will address this conversation and make it right. Walked out of the room. Baby Doll was sitting there. And I finally looked over and she's looking at me like with her jaw open and she said, I'll bet you never ever thought that conversation would ever take place. Yeah, probably so. She witnessed the whole thing. Then subsequently wrote a book, addressed that interaction in New York in the book, reinforced the fact that he was wrong and apologized. And every time I see him now, and I'll walk to the end of the room, shake hands, how you doing? Good to see you. Because I meant it.
Did you have any dealings with Vince Russo while you were there?
Yeah, I did. There was no heat, nothing like that. It was, he just seemed like he was always so busy. And when I came around to fit into whatever he was making up, he would like, okay, yeah, all right, we got this. I never asked him where we were going with it or anything like that. And that was it. Russo just seemed like he was busy all the time. And I was a project that he just needed to hammer out real quick and then move on to somebody else.
How did you feel when Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara were brought over?
Well, we thought that they were going to turn things, help the mid-card guys, which is what they did.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they came in and immediately they just like, if you're on the card, we're trying to put you in a storyline, no matter who you are. If you're on the show or if you're part of the roster, we got to give you a storyline. And it was just different because, like, you know, WCW, we weren't shooting backstage back then before they came in. So now we had to produce stuff backstage because that's the way they did it in New York. You know what I'm saying? So it just changed the whole culture of how shows are written today, and that's how they are written today. You know, the camera's just there, and we just shoot, like, with the suspension of disbelief, knowing that the camera's there. And we just, Ed was funny. So me and Conan and Ed and stuff, we hit it off, you know, immediately. Russo, I sat next to him on a plane one time, and we just started picking each other's brains for like a 2-hour trip. And a couple weeks later, they asked me to sit on booking meetings. So
was he in coach?
Huh?
Was he in coach?
Yeah, he was in coach. Yeah, they had to play. Yeah, we were the. I'll never forget. We were the first seat behind first class, sitting right there, and it was I think he was like a standby or something, and he came and said there was one empty seat right next to me, and he sat next to me. Okay. And we just started picking. We just picked our brains for like 2 hours. You know, we had identical views on the business. You know, that like the show is 2 hours of TV. You can do whatever you want. You know what I'm saying? It's not, you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into wrestling. You can just do whatever you want for 2 hours of television. There's no rule book. You know.
Yeah.
So we thought the same way. And so next thing you know, he's asked me to sit on booking meetings. So.
And how did you like that?
This is fun. It's me, Ed, Terry, Taylor, Borash would sit in, Bill Banks sometimes would sit in, but and Vince, and it was just funny because they were fun sometimes. When you get writer's block, it's not fun. You know, there were periods of time where you just be like literally just sitting there for everybody's just in silence. Can't really think of nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like you're sitting there and I was funny too because like I was comedic. Like I'll never forget this one time. It's like I've told this story a million times, but like I'll tell it again. We're sitting there for like 2 straight minutes, just nobody's thinking of anything, and I'm like, how about this? Let's shoot a shot of an empty locker room for 30 seconds, and at the end, coming soon, the Invisible Man. And bro, everybody just popped, and like we'd laugh. And like everybody crack up, and then we just start throwing weird stuff out there. You just start start talking about weird, and then you just start get back in start getting back into booking the show. Just like I was an outside the box thinker. I'd always come, and I wouldn't necessarily want these on the show, but I would just think crazy stuff like funny stuff just to pop the room. Because once you start laughing, you just start thinking differently. You just start thinking comedy, and then like you start thinking comedy, then you start thinking funny stuff you can do, then you turn that into serious stuff. It just sparks your intelligence, sparks your creative thought.
Were you paid extra for that?
Nah.
No.
But no, well, sort of. They started giving my when we travel, because here's the thing: I come home from the road, and it was right around the corner from my house. We'd meet at a hotel in a conference room, and the meeting would take like 6-7 hours, right? And they'd feed us and stuff. But I was getting my they started paying for my cars and rooms on the road. Okay, so theoretically that adds up. You know what I'm saying? Like they're paying me to go to a booking meeting for 6 hours, and I'm getting the equivalent of maybe like I don't know, maybe $1,000, $1,200 to $1,500 worth of extra stuff every week that I would be paying for, or so that was like I guess I did make more, because now I was getting office amenities and stuff. So.
Did you get any heat backstage from jealous wrestlers?
No, not heat. The only time I got heat was when, like, one of the guys Chavo didn't like an angle one time and started yelling at me in front of everybody, and like, but he came and apologized to me afterwards. But no, they liked it because they knew I was going to bat for the mid card guys. Like I was talking, I would be with the guys. Like, hey, I'm gonna ask if I can do this with you guys, And I'd throw stuff out there, trying because they were my friends, People, well, not my friends, they were kind of my peers. Yeah. Like they're all mid card guys, and I know they're not doing nothing with you. Hey, what Hey, I would tell Vince, try this with this guy.
Yeah.
Try this with this guy. Let this guy do this. This guy's entertaining. Or give Ernest Miller the mic. You know what I'm saying? This guy can talk. He can run his mouth. Just give him the mic and let him go. And they start doing it, and just stuff like that. So nobody really. If I had heat, nobody ever came and told me, "Hey, you got a lot of heat for doing this."
Right.
Because I wasn't booking myself in anything spectacular. So I was just trying to help out. I was just trying to I was a buffer in between like mid card guys that they really didn't know anything about because they've never interacted with these people and like Vince and Ed. So.
Said that to me, in my mind, I'm thinking money shot. I splash off the top rope, 1, 2, 3, extra money shot. Makes sense, right? And so I probably wrestled with that finish for about, I don't know, 6, 7, maybe even 8 months in WWE. Before I found out what the money shot really meant, I had no idea what it meant beforehand. And I remember when people would ask me, what's your finish called? I go, it's called the money shot. I remember they'd laugh. And sometimes I would sit back and I go, what is so funny about it? It's a cool name. I don't understand what's so funny about it. And it was probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 months later that I was with Tess and A-Train and we're all just joking around. And they brought it up. You got the coolest name for a finish, the money shot, man. It's whatever it was. And I said, I don't understand what's so cool about it. Making more money from winning a match? Okay. Well, I don't understand what's funny about it. And Tess looked back up at me and he was sitting in the front seat. I was sitting in the back. He turned around and stared me right in the eyes. He goes, brother, the money shot is the finish to a porn movie. And I kind of went back to the seat and I went, what do you mean it's the finish to a porn movie? He's like, yeah, it's when they finish in a porn movie. And I'm like, oh, and I started to say to myself in my head, that's son of a bitch, Vince Russo. I had no idea. I had no idea that's what they call the finish to a porn movie.
How was Vince Russo to work with? Because we always hear the negative stories, but obviously he was writing during WWE's ratings peak, so he couldn't have been that bad.
You know, Vince Russo was an envelope pusher, man. I loved working with that guy. When that guy came up with storylines and came up with, even a few Val Venus jokes that he came up with, it was amazing to watch his mind work. And really, but here's where I saw, and I could be wrong about this as well. This is just my opinion. When Vince was writing in WWE, he was writing things that were pushing the envelope as far as he possibly could. And then it seemed like Vince would pull the chains back to where he wanted it. So Vince would go way out here, like Vince Russo would go way out here, and then Vince McMahon would pull him back to where he wanted him. I guess to make it TV suitable, I guess, without going too far. But he was a great mind in wrestling. He came up with phenomenal storylines. That was a time when every single card on the show was a storyline. There was a time, Crash Holly was better known than Goldberg. And it's one of those things where he had an amazing mind. When he went to WCW, I remember that day. We were coming back, I believe, from Europe at the time when we found out that he had left the company and went to WCW. It was a somber Raw backstage when we got back to stateside. People were really shocked because he was a writing machine in WWE. When he got to WCW, it seemed like, and again, this is just my opinion, it seemed like instead of focusing on writing for everyone on the card, he got in front of the camera and all of his writing skills and talents got focused on just a few of the top guys. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what I remember seeing when I was watching the WCW show. And I think Vince was far more effective behind the scenes writing for the talent instead of going in front of the camera and becoming the talent.
When Russo and Ed Ferrara came in, they brought me in as like an observer, and I went to JJ and I said, if you watch the show, it looks like a sitcom. So when they sent them home, they had a meeting, and Brad Siegel said to me and JJ, how are you going to turn this around next week? And I proceeded to tell them, well, we need to get Goldberg back on his feet. They turned him heel. We need to make him a killer. We need to bring up some of these younger guys, blah, blah, blah. He said, that's not going to be good enough. It's not going to be a week. I had just signed my contract. I went home for 3 years and got paid.
And what are your thoughts on the Vince Russo debacle in WCW?
Here's the one that gets me. When Dusty put the belt on him, there was a stick, right? When anybody that booked put a belt on themselves, there was a stick. Russo won the world title. I didn't hear anybody complain. They kind of went along with it for a while. And then we have, and I understand what he was doing, Shark TV. But you can't take it to that level. I think that was what started to chip away with the business.
And what did you think of that angle with him and Jeff Jarrett and Hulk Hogan in Daytona Beach?
That was a work. They knew what they were going to do. Yeah. Jeff didn't want to do a job for them. And then Russo went and cut that promo. But they had worked it out early. And I got that right from Jimmy Hart.
Obviously, he was writing for WWE during the ratings peak when I guess you guys had rating at one time in the 8s. And you worked with him in TNA over the years. I know he had some bad ideas like the Kennel from Hell match, which you've already talked to me about. But what's your opinion of Russo overall, good and bad?
I think Russo was definitely very much a part of the success of WWE at that time. Um, Vince McMahon's formula was that he focused on only 4 or 5 guys, and then the whole show, the whole 2-hour show, was pretty much just those 4 or 5 guys. Where if you switched over to WCW, what was really, besides the timing, you know, and the belief, because the key thing that made WCW successful was at that time, people really genuinely believed that WWF was invading WCW when Kevin Nash and Scott Hall first showed up there. That was what lit that whole fuse, was that belief that, oh my God, these guys work for WWF. What are they doing here? And they're just invading. Because you didn't have the internet with people stooging it off. So the audience really bought into it. And that was what got the ball rolling. But then, with Bischoff going out and acquiring like the Lucha guys and Benoit and Malenko, and so you had a variety on the show that when you tuned in, you got to see a lot of different feel and style and different personalities, and it was fresh and it was different. Where in WWF it was very stale at that time. You had the same 5 or 6 guys that were the main focus of the show, and everybody else meant nothing. And Vince Russo was very instrumental in creating ideas that made everyone on the show from start to finish mean something. Everyone was a star to some degree. And my contention's always been that if you spend as much money as you do to go watch a wrestling show, there's going to be that one main guy that you really wanted to see. But the rest of that show, everybody that comes through that curtain better mean and entertain you to some degree. If not, it's a waste of time. The days of people spending enormous amounts of money to really just see one person or one match, even in boxing and UFC, that, I've heard lots of people say on a boxing or UFC card, oh, they've got so-and-so against so-and-so on the main event, but this undercard's the shits. I'm not going to sit through it. They won't go. If it's a live event, they won't go. And if it's a pay-per-view or something, they'll just buy, that last match. They won't sit through the undercard, and that's bad business, because 9 times out of 10, they won't buy the pay-per-view at all, because if they're not going to buy it from the start, they're not going to wait. They'll probably forget or just not care. Well, I'll just watch it on YouTube or something like that. Whereas if you have a great undercard along with a great main event, then people are invested and they want to watch the whole thing get to the end. And that helps them motivate their friends and family, saying, hey, you got to come over. We'll make a night of it, be a party. You can watch this, or hey, let's go out. Let's go to, they're having this at the arena tonight. And Russo was really good at doing that, of creating storylines that weren't just solely focused around 4 or 5 guys, but were focused around the entire roster to some degree. And everybody had a unique space and a unique place. And he was very creative in his utilization of the talent. And the same goes for TNA. He took that process a lot there. But Vince McMahon and Vince Russo worked very well because they balanced each other out. Vince McMahon was very detached and obviously had lost a little bit of touch of popular society, where Vince Russo was very tuned in to popular pop culture and modern society and all that. And he would infuse that into Vince McMahon, but Vince McMahon always knew what he was selling, which was at the end of the day, it was the finish. It was the fact that it was a competitive situation. I've had, I'm not speaking out of turn. Vince Russo and I have had these conversations before, where I'll make the statement that the only thing that's fake about professional wrestling is just the outcome. And he does not understand it. He does not grasp that concept. The idea that the only thing we're really selling is just that who wins and who loses. He thinks that it's all fake because you made it all up. And that's not the case, because the only thing that you're making up is why you're doing it. I screwed this guy's girlfriend. Well, Now the audience hates me that much more and wants to see this guy not just beat my ass, but beat me, win, so he can get justice, so he can prove that he's the better man. He can get the one that finally at the end. Do you understand? And without that concept, without selling properly that understanding, you don't have anything. And Vince Russo he just, we've had this conversation numerous times. He can't understand that. And he thinks like stipulation matches, cage matches, barbed wire match, Texas death match, whatever you want to call them, he doesn't understand that stipulations are enacted to level the playing field. Case in point, if a babyface wrestler is wrestling a heel wrestler, and you as the audience, you can clearly see throughout the match, babyface wrestler is better. He's going to win. And just as it looks like he's about to win, the heel wrestler intentionally, purposely, throws him over the top rope and gets disqualified. Now, the audience is upset because they know the babyface wrestler could have and would have and should have won. Well, what do? Well, now we come back with a no disqualification match. The one tool that the heel wrestler had in his box to prevent him losing and losing face was getting disqualified. He saved himself. He didn't want to do it. That's why it waited so long throughout the match. And when he was truly in dire situations, he did it. Because let's keep in mind, the wrestlers are prize fighters. If they don't win, they don't get paid. Okay? And that's why I try to communicate to the wrestlers themselves. If this were real, not a shoot, but if it were real, okay, the psychology behind what you're doing, the why you're doing it, is that if you don't win tonight, you can't pay rent. How aggressive would you be if your ability to eat and to be able to keep clothes on your back and a roof over your head was completely dependent on whether you won or lost? How aggressive would you be?
Very aggressive. You'd be
correct. And the whole idea behind wrestling, there's only two predominant ways to win, are pinfall and submission, and 99.9% of the time, those take place on the mat, not standing up. So why would you ever, unless you did something or the guy did something to you, and you showed me via your performance to the audience to make me understand, why would you ever knock somebody down and then bend over and pick them back up so you could do another bigger move? It makes no sense. That'd be like watching UFC, and there are two predominant ways to win, which are knockout and submission. And the guy knocks one guy down, but instead of ground and pounding him or grabbing the submission, he bends over, picks him back up so he can do another move. It's retarded. It makes no sense. And everybody today does it. So Russo doesn't understand the concept, and he doesn't understand the stipulations that it is to balance or increase the odds of the fact that the babyface wrestler is going to get a fair chance to win and defeat the heel wrestler. Got disqualified, now no disqualification. Looks like now the heel's getting a little more offense, but again, you can clearly see he's going to lose. Just when it looks like he's about to lose, here he goes, reaches in his trunks, pulls out brass knucks, knocks the babyface out. Well, now we got to go to a tape fist match where now the odds are now again evened, and both guys have, their brass knuckles match where both hands are taped, and now it looks like the babyface is going to finally get his justice. Here comes the buddy, jumps him, beats him up on the behalf of the heel. Well, now we go to a tag match because now the babyface has to get a partner. The whole purpose of all of this is that I couldn't tell you how many times, and I directly, and again, I'm not talking out of turn. I would go to Russo, we'd show up at TV, and all of a sudden Mickey James and Victoria are in a cage match. I'm like, what happened the last TV that I missed? That they're now in a cage. They didn't even wrestle each other. And his thought process is, if somebody's flipping through the channels and they happen to see it, they see a cage match, they're going to be more interested in and more likely to stay and watch that cage match than they are if they just see two people in the ring. Same with a ladder match or an Ultimate X match. He'd just throw them out there, and it was never that he sold the why that match was happening. And that ultimately is what really draws. It's not the match itself. It is the why behind the match, the heat, the need to see an outcome. And the only way we determine it in a fair enough manner is through this particular stipulation match. And he never got that. And I don't think, quite honestly, that his thought process ever bore fruit. I don't think that at any point in time did it ever generate a massive spike in ratings and then maintain them going forward. Of, oh, well, somebody's just flipping through the channels and they happen to see a cage match. Oh my God, this is cool. But there's no why behind it, so it never retained anybody that he may have got.
I started doing shoot interviews for this channel around 2015. When I first started doing shoot interviews, my opinion of Vince Russo was kind of jaded. Since I started doing them, I have actually conducted 4 interviews with Mr. Russo, one in person in Boulder, Colorado in December of 2016. And since then, I've done 3 Skype interviews with him. In all my dealings with him, he's been very professional. And as far as his personality, he's been very friendly. So personally, I have no issues with him. I don't agree with everything he says about wrestling. I don't agree with all of his booking philosophies and all the booking decisions he has made. But one thing you cannot deny is on May 10th, 1999, he was head writer of Raw when it got an 8.1 rating, which is incredible. And the most recent episode of Raw, at the time I'm saying this, it's June the 8th, 2020. The most recent episode of Raw, last Monday's episode, did a 0.49. I guess Paul Heyman is the head writer of Raw now. So looking back to May 10th, 1999, 8.1. Big difference. Yes, there are other factors at play as well. Way better talent in 1999 than they have in WWE right now. However, that's a massive difference in ratings in the 18 to 49 demographic. And looking at Impact, in October of 2011, when Vince Russo was head writer, they did a 1.35 rating. Now, Impact does no longer release their ratings. I'm guessing that's because they're so low. They're very difficult to find. If anyone wants to argue with me on that and prove that they do release their ratings, please show me what their recent ratings are in the comments. But I've searched for them and I follow wrestling. And the last time there was any viewership reported from Impact Wrestling and the Wrestling Observer was for their October 11th, 2019 episode of Impact that had 2,600 total viewers. So they went from a 1.35 rating in the 18 to 49 demo to in October of 2019, many years after October of 2011, they're getting 2,600 viewers. So definitely Vince Russo has 2 accomplishments that nobody in the wrestling writing business can take away from him. Those record ratings for Raw and Impact's show. As far as WCW, I looked at his ratings. He didn't hold any records there, but the average for his episodes of Nitro seemed to be in the 2s and 3s under his regime as head booker for WCW. High 2s, low 3s. So overall, there's positives and negatives to say about Vince Russo, but I'm impressed with his ratings of Raw and Impact. I don't think those records will ever be broken. And for holding those records, without question, he belongs in the WWE Hall of Fame and Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame. He's also a great heel. You guys can say what you want about him. As far as I'm concerned, he's one of the greatest heels in the wrestling business of all time. He's very hated, and proof of that is going to be the people that are going to give me heat for saying that about Russo. But because I also consider myself a heel, I really don't care. I'm a straight shooter. That's how I feel about him. Don't agree with everything he's done. I was so angry with David Arquette being champion. I'm still upset over that, but whatever. I still, by the way, don't think David Arquette should have ever been champion. And seeing the shitty matches that Arquette has put on in recent years since his big comeback to wrestling actually makes me think it was even more of a mistake.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.